What's going on, everybody? It's your observant lineman, Uche Nwaneri, and today we're going to talk a little bit about college football. So, over the last week, I have been in a number of heated discussions in regards to the situation happening right now with the NCAA. Now, before we start this video, if you like this channel, if you'd like to see me doing more of this, please hit that like button. Also hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're subscribed to the observant lineman, Uche Nwaneri, and appreciate you letting me drop that plug in. Now, back to what we were talking about. I also do videos on another channel on YouTube called Sports Wars. Now, if you've been to Sports Wars, our channel there is more in line with talking about the daily breaking news in all of the sports world. So it's not just football based. So we have been able to kind of have discussions in the general realm of everything that's going on with this COVID outbreak. Now, in our discussion in the realm of the NCAA has been one that I think has been a good, it's been good and spirited. We go back and forth on these issues, but the thing that I feel people need to understand as a former collegiate athlete, when you see Trevor Lawrence come out and say, we just want to play. Of course. Yes, of course. I agree with that 100%. You guys want to play. If I was in college as a college football player at this time, yes, of course. If it happened when I was in college back in 2002 to 2006, yes, I absolutely would want to play ball. It wouldn't matter to me whether or not there was any kind of pandemic going on. I wouldn't care because I want to play football. So I agree with them. I understand that sentiment of wanting to play. That goes without saying. If you've ever been an athlete on the collegiate, on any level, really, if you've ever been an athlete, if you're a competitor and somebody who wants to be involved with sporting, then yes, you're going to try your best to forego anything that can keep you from participating in a sport that you love. And with college football, with the NFL, with NBA, MLB, NHL, all these sports leagues, you have the ultimate competitors who are involved in these leagues. So of course, they absolutely want to be involved with playing the sport. But there are things going on with the NCAA that really are outside of the player's control. These are things that the NCAA should have been on top of from the very outset of this situation. And that's why I personally think they're in the situation they're in now. Now, some of y'all out there might be saying, well, what the heck do you mean? Like, if the guys want to play, let them play. If they don't want to play, then nobody's forcing them to play. But you see, that's where a false equivalency is brought into the picture. These guys are athletes who are on school scholarships to play football. These guys are not necessarily in situations where they can actually call any shots. They're not getting paid. They're amateur athletes. And the one thing that has been a consistent throughout this entire process since March is that the NCAA has been completely out of sync and out of tune with one another, with each other's conferences, and coming up with a plan and getting on the same page. They don't know what they're doing. They hoped that this all would disappear over time so that they could just go on as if nothing was happening at all. And it's quite a shame because now that these collegiate athletes, these student athletes' careers, especially the ones who are more than likely going to get drafted, and also seniors, their careers are now at the brink of complete irrelevance. Their careers are hanging on by a thread. And that, to me, is the fault of the NCAA. There are some who come out and say, oh, it's the media. It's the woke media that's pushing this narrative. No, it's the inability of adults, people who get paid six figures and up a year, to have a plan in place, get on the same page as a collective, as an NCAA football collective, as an NCAA sports collective, they haven't been able to get on the same page, create a plan, and execute the plan since March. When the NBA announced that they were canceling their season, within 24 hours, the NFL was already in motion. The NFL was already in motion, creating a plan, working with the NFL Players Association to make sure that the protocols for safety, testing, and tracking were in place and ready to keep them on schedule to have an NFL season in 2020. And we're going to get one. There's not going to be fans at some games for a little while, but we're going to get an NFL season. That much we know. Unless something unforeseen and catastrophic happens, the NFL will move on. Let's look at a clip here from ESPN with Kirk Herbstreit being asked as to whether or not any of the protocols that college football is trying to put in place are going to actually be enough for them to continue on with their football season. Check out this clip.
With the extending guidelines, one of them testing players 72 hours before competition. On the surface, it seems like this is okay. How do you see it?
Yeah, it's a good recommendation from the NCAA. I think everything's up to the local, the local states and cities and different testing authorities that you have around this country. What might happen at Clemson versus Oklahoma versus UCLA. I think a bigger issue, really, Matt, is the testing at that point. If we have a season, can it be uniform? Can we have the same testing all across the country? Because what I'm hearing from people is some of the tests are much more accurate at this point than other tests. And how unfair would it be if, this conference and this conference, they're using this testing, and this conference over here is deciding that they can't afford that testing. We're going to use this testing. That to me is a little bit tricky. And I think if we're going to go forward, we kind of need to all hold hands here the best we can and work together, even though we have all, really everybody in different silos when it comes to college football, big time college football, and they're all kind of coming up with their own rules. I think they need to work really together to play by the same rules.
We've been given the same guidelines that the CDC put in place. So you look at this and you see daily self-health checks, appropriate face coverings and social distancing during training camp, competition, and outside of athletics, testing strategies for all athletic activities, preseason, regular season, postseason, testing and results within 72 hours of competition in high contact risk sports. Schools adhere to local public health standards. So where in that is there any kind of real plan specific to how teams should operate? Like, where is, are they going to create a bubble? Are you going to put each team in a bubble within their own campus to keep them isolated from the regular student population? Are you going to have any kind of real contact tracing in the event that a player does test positive so that you can go back and find out who that player's been around? That doesn't provide any clarity to teams across the country to know, okay, we're going to handle this, let's say like the NFL does, where we are going to test, the NCAA is going to have testers who will come and be stationed with us throughout the course of our training camp, and they'll test players each and every day to make sure that players are not infected and to make sure that there's not an outbreak that's going to occur within 24 to 48 hours. You have a team come in and they are starting their camp, and now, for the first week, you're going to be testing every single day for the first 2 weeks, maybe, because you want to be able to catch the moment that a player is tested positive so that you can then contact trace and who they've been around. The NFL has put bracelets on players so that they're tracking the players' movements within training camp so that once a player has been infected, then they would know immediately who that player has been around in order to have them tested. When too many players are in one group, too close together at one time, these bracelets that they have will start to vibrate, reminding them to move and not be quartered in so close as to, pretty much nullify any effects that social distancing may have. So there are a number of reasonable, logical steps that the NFL has taken in order to handle the situation the best that they can. And you're not seeing any trace of that within college football. The NCAA has failed their players. These student athletes have been failed by the system, not by teams and conferences who have decided that they're not going to take that risk. Now, that brings me to my second point, liability. Liability is probably the biggest reason that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have decided to postpone until the spring. If a team is deemed to be liable for a player becoming infected and that player's health being permanently damaged, and that player losing their life because of said illness, liability then becomes a massive threat to both the university and the college football program, because you can guarantee, as sure as the sun will rise in the morning, that that family is going to file an unbelievably massive lawsuit. These guys aren't being paid to play football. They're not being paid, but these schools still make billions and billions of dollars as a collegiate collective each and every year off of players who are not getting a dime. Players who will be suspended, who will be expelled, who will be ineligible if they receive a $100 handshake from a booster member. This has to do with logistics, liability, and money. And the NCAA has not been on the same page with any of those. This is coming from CBS Sports. Battle over playing 2020 college football season intensifies as no one can get on the same page. It is now a nuclear-grade conflict of silliness. This debate over playing the 2020 college football season amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Actually, calling it a debate is an insult to civility. It is a battle of the science of two conferences, the Big Ten and the Pac-12, versus the science of three, the ACC, the Big 12, and the SEC. It is parents from half the Big Ten schools demanding answers as to why their sons aren't playing in the face of what is still a raging pandemic. On Sunday, Heisman Trophy finalist Justin Fields took the battle to a new level. Ohio State's quarterback posted a petition calling on the Big Ten to immediately reinstate the 2020 football season. It had more than 121,000 signatures in the first 4 hours, and the numbers continue to climb. Now, again, like I said, Justin Fields, hey, man, I understand it completely. I get it. I feel for you guys. I do. I would want to play as well. Everything that he's saying, everything that he's pushing, I get it. I ain't mad at him for it, and I don't disagree with him. I don't disagree, but I'm also 36 and he's like, what, 19, 20? There's some things that you should consider and you should at least give credence to that he's not going to like necessarily see at his age. I was the same way. I ain't even trying to hear it. Give me the virus now. I'm going to go out and play some football. That's how I was at his age. So I understand everything he's saying and I don't have a beef with it. If it all wasn't so befuddling, it would be sad. Ask John Drezner, the University of Washington's team physician and a member of the Pac-12 Medical Advisory Board. We are in the middle of a pandemic. Our country is one of the worst controlled on the planet. We have more deaths than any country. We have cases surging all over the place. We haven't done what we needed to do to play fall sports. And that is really sad. The NCAA's top doctor late Saturday night said there's no way to go forward with fall sports without drastic improvement in testing nationwide. But it's not over. This battle, not by a long shot. In fact, it's getting worse and more intense. An LSU infectious diseases expert seemed to call out the decisions by the Big Ten and Pac-12 as part of a Q&A with the Athletic. I would say we have seen enough to develop a safe plan. They have not, Dr. Catherine O'Neill said. Not to disparage Dr. Neal at all, but if she had opined it wasn't safe to play college football this fall, I'm not sure she'd be representing the SEC much longer, said Tom Mars, a prominent Arkansas-based attorney who has battled the NCAA on eligibility issues. That's where we are with the ACC, Big 12, and SEC. hoping to play this season while the Big Ten and Pac-12 are evaluating a spring season in 2021. For now, pick a group of medical advisors for your version of the truth. The Pac-12 issued a 12-page document dealing with the medical reasons that led to its decision not to play. So far, it is the only FBS conference to provide such an explanation. Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlesby was pressed last week why his conference didn't explain the medical reasons why it is playing. He simply said, playing is the status quo. How many times have we heard that phrase, the status quo? Let's break the status quo. Let's uphold the status quo. It's a bunch of posturing bullshit, and I hate to hear that term, status quo. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever to not be completely transparent with all that information, Mars said. Those liability waivers that players affiliated with the We Are United movement protested against just 2 weeks ago now seem like a necessity if the conferences that have canceled their seasons want to play. Liability. I've said it once, I've said it twice, and now I'll say it thrice. Liability is the real threat to college football. That's why you're now seeing something that players were vehemently against 2 weeks ago. Now, that is what they're looking to salvage their season. You're going to sign away your rights and sign away the liability the school holds in order for you to play football. That's why you shouldn't be making the decision. Because as an 18 to 21-year-old, let's be honest, we don't give a damn about liability. We don't care. When has a college student ever cared about liability? Adults care about liability. Businesses care about liability. And the NCAA will make sure that you sign away your ability to hold them accountable if you get sick by a pandemic that they've known has been in play since the beginning of this year, that they know has killed hundreds of thousands of people since the beginning of this year, that they know is the most highly infectious disease that we are dealing with in the world right now. They've known that since the beginning of the year. They know all of the facts, they know all of the science, and they want the college athlete to say, to hell with that, let's play football. For the love of football. For the love of football. That's why you don't leave it in a college-age student's hands. They are not truly adults in the matter. A group of Big Ten parents asked Mars last week for advice on how to get their sons back on the field. Mars drew up an action plan, quote unquote, that started with the parents and players asking the NCAA to rescind its ban on waivers. Liability. That means those players and parents would sign away the right to sue their respective schools if the players caught COVID-19. Specifically, Mars wrote, the parties would sign a document that extinguishes liability for negligence and requires a player to knowingly assume risks of infection. A more detailed part from the action plan follows. The NCAA made a mistake in banning liability waivers in response to Senator Cory Booker's and Senator Richard Blumenthal's demands. Though this decision was meant to protect student athletes' rights, the NCAA paternalistic reaction to the senator's demands had the effect of depriving student athletes of making an informed choice that would allow them to pursue their dreams. The immediate reaction, will parents actually agree to such a thing? The answer isn't obvious. I just dropped my daughter at the University of Iowa last night, said Gary Corner, the father of Iowa defensive back Jack Corner. Nobody asked me to sign a waiver. Nobody promised me strict protocols in contract tracing and testing. Why is it different? Sports are being postponed because we have a pandemic that is out of control. One might argue, what makes football players so special? The entire country has been, at the bare minimum, inconvenienced. There simply hasn't been enough communal cooperation in the United States, given the length and breadth of this tragedy, while foreign countries that have universally adopted mitigation measures have drastically reduced or even eliminated the spread. What's so wrong with being overcautious? COVID-19 hot zones exist in half of the Pac-12 schools, Drezner said. Corner is among that group of Big Ten parents who believe there is always a risk in playing the college football. We know that there is a risk that you go out on a football field and you can break your ankle, you can sprain your knee, you can dislocate your shoulder. These are things that we knew and we signed up for knowing that. It's an inherent part of the risk. Inherent, meaning that it is naturally part of the risk of playing a sport. There is no inherent risk in getting up and walking to your fridge in the morning. There's no inherent risk. Freak accidents can happen. You can slip and fall down your stairs. But generally, there is not an inherent risk that when you wake up in the morning and you walk to your fridge, that there is a reasonable chance that you're going to get sick and die. Now, football, different story. Football is a violent sport. It is a violent sport. There is an inherent risk when in a violent sport that you may be injured due to violent activity. You are participating in a violent activity. That is a known risk. Your risk assessment with the right training and with experience, you can mitigate those risks substantially. Doesn't eliminate them, but it brings that risk down substantially of you injuring yourself or being injured by others. Now, yes, we signed up for that. That is what we signed up to be a part of. COVID-19 is not an inherent risk of football. Signing a waiver could potentially be reckless, but wouldn't it now also be hypocritical? Would a portion of those players who campaigned so hard for their rights and demanded the elimination of such waivers now be willing to sign them away to play football? The first question regarding that would have to go to Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Would he and his We Want to Play colleagues sign such a waiver to play? We strongly believe that denying these players the opportunity to play football this season would jeopardize their fitness, their happiness, and their futures, Lisa and Ed McCaffrey said in a Michigan parents letter sent to the Big Ten. Dylan McCaffrey is a QB for the Wolverines. Corner asked, if conditions are safe enough for regular students to be on campus, why can't football continue with its strict protocols, consistent testing, and with some of the best medical professionals around? It's safe to say, amid this contentious dialogue, rookie Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren is under pressure. Some Big Ten parents have hand-delivered their messages to conference headquarters Friday asking for an in-person meeting. There is something to be said for the Big Ten releasing its rationale for cancellation. For the most part, the Big Ten Conference is comprised of state institutions using taxpayer money. In no way do I want to personally attack in any way our Big Ten leaders, Corner said. But being in business, all of us know what the principles of good leadership are. We know what the principles of poor leadership are. Meanwhile, Drezner said both the Pac-12 and Big Ten athletes have thanked team physicians for the decision to postpone the 2020 season. You also have student athletes on the other side who wanted to play no matter what the risk, he said. Those are individual choices. I'm not sure this is about right or wrong. The one thing that is proven true is that when you put people together more, you have more spread. It's an absolute truth, Drezner said. So then how did something as serious as myocarditis become a battle? The condition has been studied and treated since the 19th century. It's a viral infection that inflames or that causes inflammation of the heart. Drezner said myocarditis has been found as the cause of death in 9% of all cardiac-related deaths among college athletes. That's without factoring in COVID-19. CBS reported last week that at least 15 Big Ten players had been diagnosed with myocarditis. The condition factored heavily into the decision-making of each Power 5 conference. There's no debate that it's clinically relevant, Drezner said. But now we look here at the situation, and it really comes clear as day to me. When you read through the data, when you look at how both sides of the spectrum are handling this situation. One side is considering heavily the worst case scenario, preparing for the worst case scenario and hoping for the best. You plan for the worst and you hope for the best. Let me know what you guys think. Leave your comments down below. Hit the like button if you like this video. Subscribe to the Observant Lineman, Uche Nwaneri. Appreciate you guys, and I will catch you all on the next video. Peace.